I was told by a reliable source that Chevrolet made a car in I believe it was in the 1970s, that because of the name they chose, its sales tanked in Mexico, or I guess in Latin or Spanish-speaking nations. Well, I was told by that source specifically that it was Mexico, that this particular model of Chevrolet, because of the name they chose for it, that its sales tanked in Mexico. Good morning, or good day, and welcome to My Daily Walk, the show where a Hollywood guy, that's me, walks around and talks about anything and everything except what I'm contractually bound to conceal. Welcome to the show. If you're just hearing this, if this is the very first episode you've ever heard, I'm a guy that works in Hollywood. Doesn't matter what my name is. I'm not some famous celebrity. I'm just a guy that works in Hollywood, and I am working on right now a big project that has a lot of potential, and I'm excited about it because it's my own project. I get to be at the helm. I get to be the producer that's pushing this project. It's a good and a bad thing. If you're the front man on a project, everything depends on you, pressure's on you. That's the downside, I guess. But the upside is you get to do what you want. You get to call the shots. And so it's at the early stages of development. So it's not, I don't have a bunch of money and a whole team of staff working for me. I'm really a one-man show at this. Not really a one-man show. I have a lot of people that are committed to the project, but until the financing comes, their commitment is to their feeding their families, a job that will pay them. So there are people that are happy to be a part of it when the financing comes, but I'm at a stage of the project where, financing is waiting on me. I won't go into any more details, but so I am a Hollywood guy, but I'm not. You wouldn't know my name, so what point is that? It doesn't matter who I am. I'm a guy that works here and decided I'm going to start a podcast to talk about anything and everything for any number of reasons, and you can go back and listen to previous week's episodes, and I go off on different tangents about why I'm doing this. But if you find this remotely interesting in any way, or think you have something to contribute it at, just email me at MyDailyWalk@thiswaytv.com. So I have been getting emails, by the way, and if you want to know if I'm going to read your email on the show, just stay tuned on Fridays, because that'll be the day that I read the emails. This Friday I'll be reading several emails. I'll preview them and self-edit. There's things in some of these emails that I can't disclose, but I will take selections. Some of them I will read in their entirety. Some of them I won't even comment on. I'll just read them. They stand alone. Well, I don't know if that's true. Not commenting, me, that's a doozy. But so today's topic, I am wrong. I think that's the name of this episode. That's what I've thought. I thought of the conjunction I'm wrong. I've thought of the past tense I was wrong. But I think I am wrong better encapsulates what the point I want to get across in today's installment of My Daily Walk. So I started with an authoritative source told me when I was quite young So when you're young, just about any source is authoritative. Anything you hear, you'll just take, oh, okay, right? Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, those kinds of things. You believe whatever you're told. That's just the nature of being a human. When you are told something, the younger you are, the easier it is to swallow. And then you develop a healthy skepticism at a point. But I was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old when I heard this. We owned a Chevy Nova. My parents split when I was young, but it was my father who told me, you know, the Nova didn't sell well in Mexico because, well, in Spanish, Nova means it doesn't go. Nova is, you know, it's not going or don't go, or this, depending on how you say it, the inflection. But Nova means it doesn't work or it doesn't go, it doesn't function. Nova. It doesn't work or doesn't function or it doesn't go. And that made sense to me. Because I suppose at that point, the extent of my Spanish I had learned from him, and any other common phrases in culture, like mañana. I knew what mañana meant. I was a kid. I took Spanish in elementary school, in junior high school. But then I had the opportunity in my early 20s to live in Mexico and actually study Spanish. I had a private teacher, hour a day of class, and then an hour a day required homework, which is pretty much just writing repetitive sentences using the different tenses of the verbs and some vocabulary words, etc. And, well, living in the country where that's the native tongue, just the classes themselves are beneficial, but you have every moment of every day opportunities to practice it, especially because, well, most people down there are going to be speaking Spanish, and, well, we won't go into that. But so it was while I was there that we were traveling through. Somebody I was with was driving. We were traveling through and we stopped for gas. And the gas station, I don't recall if there are, here you have multiple different brands. There are different gas stations that are franchised all across the country. Down there, I recall seeing this one brand of gas. I don't recall if I actually ever saw any others, because I do recall seeing this one brand of gas over and over again. So maybe there's a monopoly in Mexico, or at the time, or one dominant brand, but the name of the gas, the fuel, was, or is, Nova. Nova. Now, I remember broaching the subject with my companion that, I heard that the Chevy Nova didn't sell well in Mexico because it means Nova, means it doesn't go. And here we are at a gas station where every vehicle coming in there is putting something in their tanks that doesn't work, doesn't go, it won't go. I mean, for the cars, one thing, but the fuel that fuels every car, you'd think if Nova meant it doesn't work, that's like the worst name for the fuel. And when I mentioned this to my companion, this companion had lived in Mexico for over a decade, maybe 20 years, and he said, yeah, no, I don't think that's true. Now, full disclosure here, I have not Googled it. I have not gone on Wikipedia. And this revelation, this second revelation, this other authoritative source that told me that, I didn't check it. So, to this day, I'm not sure if that first authoritative figure was right, or if the second one was right, or is right. I'm suspecting that my dad telling me that Maybe he believed it. Maybe he thought of it himself. I don't think so. I think he might have heard it from someone else, but I don't think it's true. The fact of the matter is, I was wrong, or I am wrong. One or the other. And in this case, to me, it's not important. I don't care which of these is the case, whether the Nova sold normally or if it suffered because of its name. But I bring up this experience in my life. Well, I was certain. I repeated that. I don't know how many times. I remember repeating several times between the age of 7 and 20, early 20s. Between those two, in that time span, I do remember asserting authoritatively, as if I, knew the facts, that the Chevy Nova didn't sell in Mexico very well because it was called "It Doesn't Work" or "It Doesn't Go," the name of the car. But now I think I was wrong. And that fact of the matter is, every single one of us are wrong about something. We all believe something right now, and we'll assert it. We'll speak it forth, declare it. We'll type it in a text or in a tweet, or interrupt a conversation when we hear somebody, we'll butt in with our corrective knowledge about things that we're actually wrong about. We are wrong. I am wrong. And here's a perfect example. And I'm grateful for this forum, because one of the emails I'm going to read is about the introduction to an episode I did a couple weeks ago called Happy Accidents. And in that episode, I start with a detail about the Louisiana Purchase. Now, if you've been listening all along, and this is your, 5th week, what is this, 6th week of this podcast, and you're all caught up, you may be familiar with what I'm talking about. But if you're just jumped in and this is the first one you hear, so I started with the mentioning that the Louisiana Purchase, that the United States, the territory that the United States purchased from Spain, no, France. Oh, yeah, see, I don't know, I am wrong. We purchased, Napoleon, France, bought it from France. That it was the purchase price was $2 for the entire Louisiana Purchase. Now, an email came in saying, I don't know where you heard that. I did some research. I fact checked it, and that's what I encourage everyone to do. I'm admittedly not doing any fact checking before I start recording, but I recall hearing in a class in junior high or high school, I do recall learning that the Louisiana Purchase was a steal, that it was an incredibly good deal, this amazing price. But I don't know where I got the $2 from. I must have conflated a couple of events. Maybe I was looking down at $2 million. And you know how you can write the dollar sign, the 2, and then the word million, and it just struck me. I didn't go back and fact check it. I'm relying on my email, the person who emailed me. Well, I did do a little fact checking. I did Wikipedia some of it. So the corrective action here. The email, the person who sent the email has corrected my knowledge. I will never again repeat that falsehood that the Louisiana Purchase only cost $2. Now, it was 4 cents an acre is what I did find out. It was 4 cents an acre. And the Louisiana Purchase is included about 10, 15 states or parts of states, like the hugest. It more than doubled the land size of the United States at the time, more than doubled, and turned us from immediately in one fell swoop, turned us from a minor nation kind of a small state into a superpower. A superpower at the time. Our land size doubled, and all the resources and et cetera, that we gained from it. And one of the interesting details about it, the sale was predicated on, well, the reason we got such a deal on it was there were some land disputes between France and Spain, and the seller of the Louisiana Purchase thought by selling it off so quickly, unloading it, that it would generate territorial disputes with Spain, because France was having territorial disputes. Where is this boundary of this Louisiana Purchase? It was never even really defined, and so France thought they were going to cause trouble for their rivals, Spain, and distract them in land disputes and territory disputes, and ended up not being the case. The U.S. got a good deal. Got a good deal out of it. That is one fact. It wasn't $2, but it was a huge windfall, I guess is the term, when something goes your way something goes your way more grandly than you had anticipated. You get more than you bargained for in a good way. And the rest is history. So, in acknowledging our fallibility should engender within us a true humility. Not something we are accustomed to in our daily lives in Western culture, with media blaring headlines, blaring clickbait, breaking news, and it's driven by the dollar. The more these days, I guess it's always been the case, but it's accelerating because the news cycle has shrunken literally to a news cycle used to be, well, it depends on the media, right? When we just had print media, when there was no such thing as electronic communication, a news cycle is a month or a year, or however long it takes newspapers to go on on the mail wagon across the country. The news cycle, the long news cycle. Now the news cycle's down to the minute, I guess, the hour. It's less than 24 hours. Something that would have dominated headlines even only a few years ago, something that might have dominated headlines for a week or two or a month, is gone from the news cycle in less than 24 hours. Scandals. You think, wow, if you really believe what you just said, shouldn't we investigate? Shouldn't we be all up in arms and investigate if it's true? If this accusation is true, why do you drop it as soon as the next headline comes out? Anyway, here's the thing. I believe that humans have a built-in truth detector. We have the capacity of discernment. Some things just ring true, other things with a little explanation become rational. Mathematics is the easiest example. I always kind of default to 2 + 2 = 4, irrefutable. And I mean, that's, but there are other truths that I would say are as irrefutable. But how do we determine when we're right and when we're wrong? How do you determine if a thing, who do you trust? Which sources, right? That's really the key. Which sources and what is the motive? That's how you can determine truth. this is just off the top of my head. Reliable sources, what incentive, what motive, and any trial lawyer worth his or her salt will attest to the fact that a hostile witness is a very, very, very strong piece of evidence, testimonial evidence. A hostile witness, a person who would be harmed by the information that they are speaking forth. Someone who would experience detrimental consequences for the information that they speak forth. That's called a hostile witness. Someone who's even opposed, or a person who is opposed, that's it, a hostile witness. A person who is opposed to the facts on the ground, declaring the facts on the ground to be true, is extremely powerful evidence for the truth of a matter. And I mean, I could give examples of, if we're going to, why make up an example? My mind is a little bit dull this morning, so forgive me for meandering. Sometimes I cover a topic and I don't have enough time to get it all out, but sometimes I just get a little distracted by the things going on in my life. So, full disclosure, right now I'm in the middle of this project, and what I am doing is uncovering facts. And I'll come across the facts, I'll find corroboration for them, but some of the facts I will, before I get corroboration, I'll come to certain conclusions or speculations that I'll prefer. Like, oh, if this and that are true, then maybe this is also true. And then I might let my mind wander into that other subject without corroborating. And then later I'll come across facts that change, that either directly refute my speculation or add further context that renders my conclusion unlikely. If you're tracking with what I'm saying, it's the juggle of an artist, right? Like the creativity to be a writer, which is what I'm doing. I'm sure I've mentioned before, the thing I'm working on right now is the writing. It's the writing of the script of a story that is a true story, and I'm been researching for 2 years the facts. And there's this taboo word among historians. It's called truth. Among historians in academia, that's just not a word they use. They don't dig for the truth. They dig for most reliable or most likely scenarios, right? And so when I speak of truth in that context with historians, I have to temper my language. Objective truth or objective facts, and there is the ability or the possibility to be objective without slanting. And so if I pick a potential data set like that I want to be true, I have to be willing to be wrong and change and correct. And that's what I have been doing. I've been writing this. I'm in Act 2 of, it's 3 acts if anybody knows screenplay structure. I'm in the second act of a 3-act story structure, and I've had to go back and correct some things as I continue research. It's kind of parallel. I'm trying to write it out and research it simultaneously. I've done most of the research, but when I get down to the nitty-gritty, there's still details that I have to suss out, I have to flesh out. And my commitment to the owners of this property, because I've secured the rights to the story. I don't own the story, but I have the exclusive rights to it. And my commitment is to tell the truth, whatever that means, right? Well, what that means is be as objective and factual as possible. And so there are plenty of things that I've wanted to be true that I go in and find out, oh yeah, nope, that's not true. In fact, there's one thing I was really, really hoping to be true, and went into an archive and found a report, a report of an objective observer, a person just doing their job that had no care one way or the other about this fact, and the facts that they observed completely debunked what I was hoping to be true. And there you go. I got to let that go. As a human, we have to be wrong willingly and humble ourselves and be self-correcting, correct at all times, and trust the authorities, trust the objective authorities, there are some logic devices that we can use, like Occam's razor. Occam's razor just says the simplest answer is most often the right one. And there are other, logic principles in logic like that we use all the time, that we just don't necessarily know the name for them. But if a great grand conspiracy is required for a certain piece of information to be true, the grander that conspiracy, the less likely it is actually true. Less likely the conspiratorial aspects of that information is true. But this story that I'm working on, one of the things that's driving me is, as a creative person, like, I've had people praise my writing. I've won an award for my producing and editing. So, I guess I have some skills, but what I'm uncovering in the story that I'm working on is I couldn't invent a more compelling plot line, a more compelling protagonist and antagonist. I couldn't have invented a more compelling scenario than this thing that I'm working. I've written some fiction, created some stuff that people loved, but this is the closer I get to the details, and in that mindset of being just looking for the facts rather than imposing my desires on the material, just looking into the facts. The closer I get to those facts, the more compelling, the more interesting, and actually hard to believe, the more incredible the story becomes. And so, by kind of emasculating myself, or flagellating myself, or questioning myself, or denying myself, and saying, you're a creative guy, but not nearly as creative as the author of this story, and that's kind of a little nugget that would probably be the subject of a whole nother episode. The notion that the author of reality is way more creative than any of the creatives that author created. Somebody write that down and feed it back to me if that was a coherent sentence. It kind of sounded good. Anyway, so I am wrong, and so are you. And if you heard anything that I said that I was wrong about, or that I was right about, fact check me and email me. MyDailyWalk at thiswaytv.com, and I will read it on Freeform Friday. So, what are you wrong about? What do you think you might be wrong about? And that's the trick. It's like, we don't even know. I'm not saying question everything you believe, but don't just jump in and believe everything you hear until you've fleshed it out. Look at both sides, at least two sides of every story. There's at least two sides. So, That'll do it. I am wrong.